The Yemeni Civil War is an ongoing multilateral civil war that began in late 2014 mainly between the Rashad al-Alimi-led Yemeni government and the Houthi armed movement, along with their supporters and allies. Both claim to constitute the official government of Yemen. The civil war began in September 2014 when Houthi forces took over the capital city Sanaa, which was followed by a rapid Houthi takeover of the government. On March 21, 2015, the Houthi-led Supreme Revolutionary Committee declared a general mobilization to overthrow then-President Abdrabbuh Mansur Hadi and expand their control by driving into southern provinces. The Houthi offensive, allied with military forces loyal to Saleh, began fighting the next day in Lahij Governorate. By 25 March, Lahij fell to the Houthis and they reached the outskirts of Aden, the seat of power for Hadi's government. Hadi fled the country the same day. Concurrently, a coalition led by Saudi Arabia launched military operations by using airstrikes to restore the former Yemeni government. Although there was no direct intervention by Iran, who support the Houthis, the conflict has been seen by Western sources as an extension of the Iran-Saudi Arabia proxy conflict and as a means to combat Iranian influence in the region. Houthi forces currently control the capital Sanaa and all of North Yemen except Marib Governorate. They have clashed with Saudi-backed pro-government forces loyal to Hadi. Since the formation of the Southern Transitional Council in 2017 and the subsequent capture of Aden by the STC in 2018, the anti-Houthi coalition has been fractured, with regular clashes between pro-Hadi forces backed by Saudi Arabia and southern separatists backed by the United Arab Emirates. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, and the Islamic State have also carried out attacks against both factions, with AQAP controlling swathes of territory in the hinterlands and along stretches of the coast. The UN brokered a 2-month nationwide truce on April 2, 2022 between Yemen's warring parties, which would also allow fuel imports into Houthi-held areas and some flights operating from Sanaa International Airport to Jordan and Egypt. The UN announced on June 2, 2022 that the nationwide truce had been further extended by 2 months. According to the UN, over 150,000 people have been killed in Yemen, as well as estimates of more than 227,000 dead as a result of an ongoing famine and lack of healthcare facilities due to the war. In 2018, the United Nations warned that 13 million Yemeni civilians face starvation in what it says could become the worst famine in the world in 100 years. The crisis has only begun to gain as much international media attention as the Syrian civil war in 2018. The international community has condemned the Saudi Arabian-led bombing campaign, which has included widespread bombing of civilian areas inside the Houthi-controlled western part of Yemen. According to the Yemen Data Project, the bombing campaign has killed or injured an estimated 19,196 civilians as of March 2022. The United States has provided intelligence and logistical support for the Saudi-led campaign, which continues despite the Biden administration's pledges to withdraw U.S. support for Saudi Arabia in the Yemen War. Background: after the end of their rule, from the 1960s onwards, Zaydis faced discrimination and Sunnification policies from the consequent Sunni-dominated governments. For example, Salafis in Sada claimed al-Shawkani as an intellectual precursor, and future Yemeni regimes would uphold his Sunnization policies as a unifier of the country and to undermine Zaydi Shi'ism. Ansar Allah, sometimes anglicized as Ansarullah, known popularly as the Houthis, is a Zaydi group with its origins in the mountainous Sanaa Governorate on Yemen's northern border with Saudi Arabia. They led a low-level insurgency against the Yemeni government in 2004 after their leader, Hussein Badreddin al-Houthi, was killed in a government military crackdown following his protests against government policies. The intensity of the conflict waxed and waned over the course of the 2000s, with multiple peace agreements being negotiated and later disregarded. The Houthi insurgency heated up in 2009, briefly drawing neighboring Saudi Arabia to the side of the Yemeni government, but cooled the following year after a ceasefire was signed. Then during the early stages of the Yemeni revolution in 2011, Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi declared the group's support for demonstrations calling for the resignation of President Ali Abdullah Saleh. Later that year, as Saleh prepared to leave office, the Houthis laid siege to the Salafi majority village of Damaj in northern Yemen, a step toward attaining virtual autonomy for Sadah. The Houthis boycotted a single candidate election in early 2012 meant to give Abdrabbuh Mansur Hadi a 2-year term of office. They participated in a national dialogue conference, but withheld support from a final accord in early 2014 that extended Hadi's mandate in office for another year. Conflict between the Houthis and Sunni tribes in northern Yemen spread to other governorates, including the Sanaa Governorate by mid-2014. Allegations of outside support. In April 2015, United States National Security Council spokeswoman Bernadette Meehan stated that, "It remains our assessment that Iran does not exert command and control over the Houthis in Yemen." The Houthis have long been accused of being proxies for Iran, since they both follow Shia Islam, although the Iranians are 12 Imam Shias and the Houthis are Zaidi Shia. The United States and Saudi Arabia have alleged that the Houthis receive weapons and training from Iran. While the Houthis and the Iranian government have denied any military affiliation, Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei openly announced his spiritual support of the movement in a personal meeting with the Houthi spokesperson Mohammed Abdul Salam in Tehran, in the midst of ongoing conflicts in Aden in 2019. Also, IRGC Commander Nasser Shabani was quoted by the Fars news agency, the semi-official news agency of the Iranian government, as saying, "We, IRGC, told Yemenis, Houthi rebels, to strike 2 Saudi oil tankers, and they did it, on August 7, 2018. The African nation of Eritrea has also been accused of funneling Iranian material to the Houthis, as well as offering medical care for injured Houthi fighters. The Eritrean government has called the allegations groundless and said after the outbreak of open hostilities that it views the Yemeni crisis as an internal matter. According to a secret United Nations document, North Korea had aided the Houthis by selling weapons. The Yemeni government meanwhile has enjoyed significant international backing from the United States and Persian Gulf monarchies.
U.S. drone strikes were conducted regularly in Yemen during Hadi's presidency in Sanaa, usually targeting Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula.
The United States was also a major supplier of weapons to the Yemeni government, although according to the Pentagon, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of that material has gone missing since it was delivered. Saudi Arabia provided financial aid to Yemen until late 2014, when it suspended it amid the Houthis' takeover of Sanaa and increasing influence over the Yemeni government. According to Amnesty International, the United Kingdom also supplied weaponry used by Saudi-led coalition to strike targets in Yemen. Amnesty International also says that U.S. based Raytheon Company supplied a laser-guided bomb that killed 6 civilians on June 28, 2019. In May 2019, State Secretary Mike Pompeo announced an emergency to push through $8.1 billion of arms sales to Gulf allies like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan, citing Iranian activity in the Middle East. Despite widespread congressional opposition, an August 2020 report by the Office of Inspector General detailed that Pompeo complied with the legal prerequisites to do so. The report, however, also noted that the possible threat to the lives of the civilians caught in the crossfire wasn't assessed properly at the time of the emergency. The State Department was also accused in the report of violating the threshold of the Arms Export Control Act while approving arms sales to Gulf states. Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. In response to rumors that Saudi Arabia could intervene in Yemen, Houthi commander Ali al-Shami boasted on March 24, 2015 that his forces would invade the larger kingdom and not stop at Mecca, but rather Riyadh. The following evening, answering a request by Yemen's internationally recognized government, Saudi Arabia began a military intervention alongside 8 other Arab states and with the logistical support of the United States against the Houthis, bombing positions throughout Sanaa. In a joint statement, the nations of the Gulf Cooperation Council, with the exception of Oman, said they decided to intervene against the Houthis in Yemen at the request of Hadi's government. King Salman of Saudi Arabia declared the Royal Saudi Air Force to be in full control of Yemeni airspace within hours of the operation beginning. The airstrikes were aimed at hindering the Houthis' advance toward Hadi's stronghold in southern Yemen. Al Jazeera reported that Muhammad Ali al-Houthi, a Houthi commander appointed in February as president of the Revolutionary Committee, was injured by an airstrike in Sanaa on the first night of the campaign. Reuters reported that planes from Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, Sudan, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Bahrain are also taking part in the operation. Saudi Arabia requested that Pakistan commit forces as well, but Pakistan's parliament officially voted to remain neutral. However, Pakistan agreed to provide support in line with the United Nations Security Council resolution, dispatching warships to enforce an arms embargo against the Houthis. On April 21, 2015, the bombing campaign was officially declared over, with Saudi officials saying they would begin Operation Restoring Hope as a combination of political, diplomatic, and military efforts to end the war. Even still, airstrikes continued against Houthi targets, and fighting in Aden and Abd-Ali went on. The United Arab Emirates has also spearheaded an active role against fighting ACAP and has deep presence in Yemen through a partnership with the United States. UAE Brigadier General Musallam al-Rashidi responded to the accusations by stating that Al-Qaeda cannot be reasoned with and cited that they killed many of his soldiers. The UAE military stated that accusations of allowing ACAP to leave with cash contradict their primary objective of depriving ACAP of its financial strength. The notion of the coalition recruiting or paying ACAP has been thoroughly denied by the United States Pentagon, with Colonel Robert Manning, spokesperson of the Pentagon, calling the news source patently false. The governor of Hadramaut Faraj al-Bashani dismissed the accusations that Al-Qaeda has joined with the coalition rank, explaining that if they did there would be sleeper cells and that he would be the first one to be killed. President Joe Biden announced a freeze on arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the UAE in January 2021, and announced that he would end American support for the Saudi coalition. On February 4, 2021, new U.S. President Joe Biden announced an end to the U.S. support for Saudi-led operations in Yemen. As of April 13, 2021, arms sales to the UAE have not been stopped, while sales to Saudi Arabia continue to be paused. However, the details of the end of American involvement in the war have yet to be released. In June, the Biden administration did not provide any answer to congressional queries regarding the level of continuing American involvement in Yemen. A report released by Amnesty International, the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights, ICHR, and Center de Law for Peace Studies in May 2022 revealed the role of Spanish arms in the Yemen War. It presented evidence that a Spanish company, Airbus Defense and Space S.A., exported arms to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. These arms were used in the alleged war crimes in the conflict, including attacks on schools, hospitals and against civilians. Between 2015 and June 2021, Spanish arms export licenses granted to Saudi were 116 and to the UAE were 140. During that period, Spain's arms transferred to the two Gulf nations reached over €1,600 million. Spain was responsible for the production, transfer and maintenance of the Eurofighter Typhoon aircraft and the Airbus A330 MRTT, both of which were exported to Saudi and the UAE. The report also highlighted that Airbus Spain produced parts of Eurofighter, which were delivered to the UK's BAE Systems before being transferred to the two Arab countries. Conclusion. The Yemen Civil War resulted in a severe lack of food and vegetation. Agricultural production in the country has suffered substantially, leaving Yemen to face the threat of famine. Yemen has been since UNSC Resolution 2216 was approved in April 2015, under blockade by land, sea, and air, which has disrupted the delivery of many foreign resources to Houthi-controlled territory. In a country where 90% of the food requirements are met through imports, this blockade has had serious consequences concerning the availability of food to its citizens. It is reported that out of the population of 24 million in Yemen, every day 13 million are going hungry and 6 million are at risk of starvation. In October 2016, Robert Fisk reported that there is strong evidence suggesting that the agricultural sector in Houthi-controlled territory was being deliberately destroyed by the Saudi-led coalition, thus exacerbating the food shortage and leaving the Houthis dependent solely on imports, which are difficult to obtain in view of the blockade. Let's hope this war comes to an end soon and the suffering of the innocent in this conflict ends. Until next time, take care.